Greetings to all in the love and light of the one infinite creator, and welcome to the fifth episode of the Seattle Law of One podcast. Today, our focus is on what is referred to in the Law of One as harvest or graduation. Harvest/graduation are terms that are mentioned a lot in the Law of One that explain what the next big step is, both in our individual and our collective spiritual growth and evolution. Understanding this can change everything about the way you look at everything, at life, at death, at everything in between, and everything after. How so? Let's find out today. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found on the list of study groups on the L&L research page shown on your screen. We do also have a Facebook group, and we do actually meet twice a week on Zoom at the time shown on your screen. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or to join our Zoom meetings. Anyone who is interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at the email address shown on your screen, and you can get on our mailing list, and we'll send out weekly updates to let you know what we are doing that week, as well as the Zoom links. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of these podcast episodes, as well as Q&As that we do with Jim McCarty, as well as Gary, Trish, and Austin from the L&L channeling team that channels with Jim. Note that if you are watching on your TV, each episode is divided into chapters by topics, so you can skip through the chapters if you want, if you're not necessarily interested in watching the whole episode beginning to end. Likewise, if you are watching on a computer, if you click on the video link, you should see a list of topics and timestamps below the video. And again, you can just click on the timestamp to skip through topics as suits your interest. Otherwise, as mentioned, our topic today is harvest and graduation. Let's get to meet our panelists for today. Panelists, would you introduce yourself by name and where you're calling from, starting with Grace?
Hi there, my name's Grace Rude, and I'm calling from South Florida.
Nice. And Linda?
My name is Linda Hoagland, and I'm calling from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Nice. And Bora?
Hi everyone, I am Bura. I'm calling from Southeast Michigan. I'm a half Turk, half North American, living the life peacefully and happily in Michigan.
Nice.
Glad to be here.
And we are so happy to have all four of you here. Really looking forward to our conversation today. I did want to remind our viewers, in case it was not obvious already, none of us here are experts. Like you, we just enjoy learning about the Law of One and having good conversations about it. For those viewers who don't really have anybody nearby that they can have conversations with, we hope that you can feel like you're just kind of in the room with us. And hopefully, maybe we will see you at one of our Zoom sessions. Otherwise, just know that we could be wrong about anything that we're saying today, as I assume could you, the viewer, as well. So what is graduation? What is harvest? In order to understand harvest or graduation, you kind of need to understand a bit about densities. You can think of densities as levels of spiritual evolution, kind of like grades in a school. They are called densities because supposedly the light at each of these different levels is more dense or more intense, has more truth, more information in it than the level below it. Comparing fourth density to third density is kind of like comparing a fiber optic cable to an old copper wire, or comparing a 4G cellular network to a 3G cellular network. Hopefully you kind of get the gist of this. So you could say that first density is the density of consciousness of the elements, earth, fire, water, and air. I have known Indian medicine persons or healers who do seem to communicate with fire and with stones in the work they do. Second density, you could say, is the density of awareness of, say, plants, for example, that are aware of the light and grow towards the light, as our friends in the Confederation have noted many times. Or it's the density of animals acting instinctively to protect themselves, their family, their tribe, their group, and so on. Third density, you could say, is the density of choice. This is the density where we are, and it's the density where each of us is called to make a choice between thinking of others or just thinking of ourselves. This is known as the service to others path, or STO, or the service to self path of STS. You could think of service to others as the path where you see Creator not just in yourself, but in all other selves. It's the path of thinking of others just a little bit more, at least, than thinking of yourself, and seeking to empower others as equals. It is known as the positive path, and in order to graduate from third density to fourth density, you have to achieve a vibrational state where thinking of others at least 51% compared to 49% yourself. Again, it's really just a matter of getting to the place where you're thinking of others just a little bit more than yourself, perhaps, or maybe a lot more than yourself. The service to self path, you could say, is the path of seeing the Creator only in yourself, not in other selves. It is a path of thinking of yourself more than others and seeking to control others in order to gain power for the self. It is often referred to as the negative path, and in order to graduate from third density to fourth density, you have to achieve a vibrational state of being 95% service to self, meaning you're not thinking about anyone else more than, say, 5% of the time. That's what's needed to graduate. Otherwise, as you can see from the diagram, in third density, if you do achieve those rates, you can graduate to fourth density on service to others path, or to fourth density on the service to self path. But those who do not make any choice or don't polarize enough to reach 51% service to others on the STO path, or 95% service to self on the service to self path, basically will have to repeat third density until they reach that point. And as we have said many times, as Ross said in session 7, the law of one blinks neither at the light or the darkness, but is available for service to others and service to self. This is probably one of the most difficult things for folks to understand who are new to the law of one, the idea that people who are that selfish and that controlling of others are on an equally legitimate path. But from the eyes of the Creator, they're both paths to the Creator, either seeing the Creator in yourself or seeing the Creator in others. Either way, it is considered a legitimate path. Otherwise, yeah, you could also kind of think of densities as being like liquids of different densities in a glass. Harvest graduation just means that after you die, after you pass into larger life, after you leave this incarnation, you just end up going to whatever density most closely matches your natural vibration, you could say. Otherwise, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what Ra has said about densities. In session 6, question 14, Ross said, "The law of one states simply that all things are one, that all beings are one. There are certain behaviors and thought forms consonant with the understanding and practice of this law. Those who, finishing a cycle of experience, demonstrate various grades of distortion of that understanding of thought and action will be separated by their own choice into the vibratory distortion most comfortable to their mind, body, spirit complexes." Kind of harkens back to that glass with liquids of it in different densities. This process is guarded or watched by those nurturing beings who, being very close to the law of one and their distortions, nevertheless have the distortions toward active service. Thus, the illusion is created of light, or more properly, but less understandably, light/love. This is in varying degrees of intensity. The spirit complex of each harvested entity moves along the line of light until the light grows too glaring, at which time the entity stops. This entity may have barely reached third density, or may be very, very close to the ending of third density light, love, distortion, vibratory complex. Nevertheless, those who fall within this octave of intensifying light, love, then experience a major cycle during which the opportunities for many of the discovery of distortions which are inherent in each entity, and therefore the lessening of these distortions. Yes, it is worth noting that for those who are new to the law of one, these are all words that are being channeled. These are words that are coming through somebody's mouth who is, in Carla's case, was in a deep, deep trance. She was largely out of her body and was not aware of the words that were coming out of her mouth. But she had gone into such a deep, 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 deep part of her subconscious that she was supposedly making contact with these entities who identified themselves as extraterrestrial beings or angelic beings, you could say, from other worlds. So otherwise, yeah, thoughts, reflections on this? Grace, as you're looking through this passage, any thoughts, reflections to share?
For me, I guess I just think about those higher level beings that are watching and guarding the process and how even still they have a distortion towards service. And I think that's interesting because as you continue the path, I guess you have to eventually drop that distortion to return with the one. So that was interesting.
Indeed. Linda, any thoughts, reflections on this?
I also remember, I believe that the people that are providing the love and the light that we are moving towards are coming from an octave that is higher than ours. I've read that and I believe that Quo said something about that. And so the fact that we will have some sort of communion with them, however limited, as we go through the harvest process. Now, one thing that I'm seeing here that I'm wondering about, they're talking about the entity may have barely reached third density or maybe close to the ending of third density. I had always thought that in fourth and fifth density, you also went through a harvest. But it sounds like what they're saying here, the harvest is only from third to fourth. What do you
I
think?
think there is some form of harvest at all the other densities. My take on this is that they were just focusing on the harvest for third density.
Okay.
But I could be wrong on that too.
I was unsure. I mean, so anyway, I was wondering what the rest of you thought.
Yeah, that's a great question. Bura, any thoughts on that or anything else from this passage?
I think this is a great start for our podcast because one thing that really speaks to my heart here is, the current dogmatic teachings and spiritual culture of our planet. Most of people think that, okay, it's a really judgmental process after we die. Your good deeds and bad deeds are weighed, and you're being judged. I'm using the word judged here. Whereas this process kind of elucidates that, very pure light bringers, without any judgment, really evaluates the experience that you created. And based on that, okay, your vibratory level, you need to repeat it and make a choice or refine your actions to make a choice, or you move on to the next higher level of consciousness. So this is actually a very good start for us. So it tells that a harvest process is really not judgmental, it's really loving, and it is carried out by beings that of extreme purity. I love it.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that too. I know the whole concept of heaven and hell and most organized religions like Christianity just never made sense to me, whereas this process actually kind of makes sense to me. And I love that first opening line, the law of one states simply that all things are one, that all beings are one. That really is pretty much a good summation of the law of one right there. And everything else that we see and everything else that we hear or read is really just kind of details on that one single thing. Shall we go ahead and look at another passage? This one comes with a graphic that I put in just to make it a little easier to understand. In session 13, the question was, how does a third density planet become a fourth density? Ross says, and I believe I edited this a little bit for brevity, the fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. I believe they're suggesting here that our solar system, our planet, our galaxy has moved through space-time into some part of the universe where the vibrations are changing, are different. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of being able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. I think it would be worth noting at this point that there do seem to be two different forms of harvest. There's harvest on the individual level, which anybody can do at any point after they die. This process that we've talked about kind of happens. But there's also a planetary harvest that is happening at certain periods of time, which I think we will see on our, I'm not sure, 25,000 year cycles. It would seem that in third density, every 25,000 years, 25, 50, 75,000 periods, there's an opportunity for what could be thought of as a planetary harvest, where humanity as a whole could graduate from third density to fourth density. But it requires humanity as a whole to collectively make a choice between service to others or service to self path. And since we do actually have entities on the planet that are trying to graduate in both ways, I believe the service to others entities by far outnumber the service to self. But service self entities have their own influence on the process. And so what they're saying here is that we're having a little bit of a hard time, both as individuals and as a collective, to collectively move the needle towards service to others, for example, so that we can all graduate, the planet as a whole can graduate. To finish this passage, thus the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your peoples the vibration of understanding, is not effective with the present societal complex. Thus the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. At least that was the case back in the early 1980s when this was recorded. Linda, do you have any thoughts, reflections on anything from this passage?
Yeah, as the last sentence there, however, there are few to harvest. As you said, this was done back in 1986, and it's a vastly different bunch of people on Earth right now. I mean, I remember back when I first got involved with the raw contacts back in the early 90s, there was maybe 20 people coming to homecoming. That's all the interest that was generated at this time. And now there's thousands of people in our audience that are so eager to get involved in the raw contacts and in all the other channelings that we do. And the growth of love and light between the 1980s and now is just absolutely astronomical. So I think the amount of people that are able to be harvested at this time has really increased. And I think it's just so wonderful to see it. And we are so lucky to be on Earth right now, to be able to have seen the transition from a third density Earth into a fourth density Earth. I mean, we're really blessed.
Such a beautiful thing. Yeah, well said. Yeah, and I appreciate your sharing that, because I'm guessing most of our viewers can think of at least one or two people in their lives who really do seem to be at least 51% service to others. They seem to dedicate so much of their life to helping others, regardless of whether they know anything about the law of one, or maybe it has to do with their religious or spiritual principles, or maybe they're just really thoughtful people. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
It has a lot to do with intent. For
sure. Yeah, indeed. And as you mentioned, yeah, a lot more people, I think, are aware of these teachings and understandings. And it's a wonderful thing. Bora, did you have anything to add? Grace, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I actually really love what Linda said. I mean, we can give more numbers about it, like, as the time progressed, like, Code, the follow-up confederational entity after Ra has stated that there are much more people closer to service to other harvests. So we have to keep optimistic.
Indeed. Grace, anything to add?
Nope, Linda did great.
Nice. Well, I do want to think a little bit about why graduation or harvest is important to learn about. I know to me, it answers some important questions about what happens after we die. It explains a lot about what's going on in the world right now that seems to be so chaotic and topsy-turvy. And I think it gives us some pretty good suggestions on where we're going after this. I was a public high school teacher for about 36 years, teaching science. And I have always looked at things with a questioning, skeptical mind. And I know that the power of a good scientific theory is how well it explains a lot of different things happening in the world, as well as being able to make accurate predictions for the future. And so I can say from my own perspective, yeah, I think that's what makes these teachings in particular so powerful. It really does explain a lot of what's going on in the world right now in ways that other ways don't. And I believe it does give us some pretty good predictive power. There's things that they said 40 years ago that seem to have come true already, and they are talking about things that are likely to be happening in the years to come. Bora, did you have any thoughts, reflections on this passage? Or, I mean, any thoughts or reflections on why graduation harvest so important to learn about?
Well, for many people, I believe subconsciously that's what we yearn for. Metaphysically speaking, okay, we have our identities as humans, but I believe, and I think I know that we come with a plan, and most of us come to a plan to this planet at this moment of harvest, the planetary harvest. So yeah, it's really our kind of like, those who are exposed to this valuable information, law of one, it's kind of our responsibility to really keep this in our heart, that positive harvest for ourselves doesn't mean like it's not an individualistic thing. As you try to keep yourself, to discipline yourself in more service to others path, it also opens the energetic channels for other beings. Like Linda described, there used to be 20 people knowing it, but now there's a huge awakening to this information and reality of law of one across the planet. There's many people across the world, like in different countries. So that's why it's important. That's why I think we need to harvest information to the heart. There's transit information out there about some, densities like planets, good versus bad, etc. But it's more than that. I think this information particularly came to us through Carla to increase the efficiency of positive harvest on this planet. That's why it's really important.
Indeed, well said. Grace, any thoughts on why this is important to learn about for
Yeah, I
viewers
think
who are
Burris,
new to this?
I think Burris said something very, very interesting. And I think you're absolutely right when you said this, that the law of one came to us to make harvest more efficient. And that's exactly what it does to those who are called to it. It gives you this giant framework to look at life and to understand what happens before death and after death. For me, why it's so important is that it answers every question I've ever had for Christianity. I'm an American woman, and I was grown up in the Bible Belt, and you know, all of the questions I had weren't Christianity couldn't answer that. And instead of, an encouraging attitude towards questioning things, I was met with, don't ask questions and kind of just accept and pray on these things. And, that really turned me off from religion and any kind of framework of any kind for a really, really long time. But what the law of one did is that it paints this picture for you. It helps you understand that you actually created your life story and you can still be co-creator while you are here incarnate. And I think that, it gives each person who's able to kind of digest this information a way to look at life and say, wait, what's happening to me is something that I planned for my growth and my development. And I think that's really special.
Well said. Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. I would imagine there are quite a few of our viewers who could relate to that also, having grown up in church or having questioned church theology otherwise. And it's probably worth noting that Carla was a devout Christian who sang in the church choir. And when she was channeling, she had a Bible by her head opened to the first page of the Gospel according to John. Because she wanted that to be part of the process. And she always called on Jesus to be with her and to protect her from any entities who might actually try to speak through her, who might have a different negative agenda. Linda, would you mind speaking to that, or anything else about why you think this stuff is important to learn about?
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Carla and her attachment to Christianity.
Yeah, go for it.
But if you're talking about why it's important to us, the thing that I like so much about it is it accepts you at where you're at. You're not being forced to go one direction or another. With the raw contacts, it always states all the time that there's no time. So if you don't make it this time, then you just kind of rinse and repeat. You go through the same another 25,000 or 75,000 years, and you provide at the same time more experiences for the creator, because everything that we go through is given as a gift to the creator. So it doesn't matter how many lifetimes it takes. It's all a gift to him, to it.
Well said. That's so beautiful. And it calls back to what we were saying about those on the service to self path, those entities that we see as the most abhorrent, most terrible human beings, whether they are mass murderers or sex child traffickers or rapists. They are, I mean, if all is one, if you believe all is one, then they are in fact creator, just trying to experience all the possibilities of the brightest light and the darkest dark, and the furthest in the positive and the furthest in the negative direction you can go. So appreciate your reminder of that. I did want to talk a little bit about what is called the Sinkhole of Indifference. This is kind of the question as to, in session 17, Dawn, the questioner, asked, why is the negative path so much more difficult a path to attain harvestability upon than the positive? Ra says, I am Ra. This is due to a distortion of the law of one, which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity may be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of other selves is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to other selves. The, shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between the two. I love the visuals. I love the imagery here of if you have, the service to others pole on one side and the service to self pole on the other side. They're saying that it's really hard. Not that many people actually achieve the 51% service to others cut for graduation, shall we say. Very few entities actually reach the 95% cut for service to self. And in between is this huge, I picture like a black hole, a big gravity well that just tends to suck people into it. As far as why this is, can you talk to this a little bit? Grace, what's your understanding of the sinkhole of indifference?
I think that third density, the environment here is just so rich for everyone to not give a shit. I think that the catalyst here, I mean, it's programmed for you to really just survive and exist, and that could be it. In today's society, it's a little bit different. I think that there are direct and distinct catalysts that make people tend to think about themselves more than others. For me, as somebody who's just generally positively oriented, I find that so hard to wrap my head around. It's hard for me to understand the apathy that people feel. Even when I was an atheist, like didn't believe in God, and if there is a God, I don't want anything to do with it. Even when I was operating from that mindset and that framework, I still thought about other people. I still did good just to do good. So it's really, really hard for me to understand how people just sit in this lukewarm apathy. I mean, we're on a freaking space rock. And nobody thinks about that. Nobody thinks that we're on planet Earth. It's wild to me.
Well, I think one could say that that is part of the agenda for those service to self entities who I think it would be fair to say are attracted to positions of power in our political systems and our economic systems and all of our social institutions. And it would appear to be a deliberate strategy to do that, to keep people so desperate just to
Absolutely.
scratch their way through a day, to get through the working day and put food on the table and get the kids up and taken care of. That, yeah, who has time to think about this?
And I'm seeing an evolution with the advancement in technology where it's so service to self oriented. It is designed to keep you distracted. It is designed to make you check out. And
For sure.
yeah, it's wild.
I think they would like nothing better than to just keep us as docile consumers and slaves, for sure. Linda, Bora, any thoughts on Sinkhole?
Well, at the same time, what you're talking about of being in the sinkhole of indifference, you were talking about the negative entities trying to keep us down there, to keep us quiet. At the same time, that might be catalyst that is being presented to us. And then our ability to take that catalyst and change it into something more beautiful, to embrace the catalyst, to overcome it, and by that way, that gives us the first step out of that sinkhole of indifference.
What a great way to think of it. Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Bora, any thoughts on any of this?
Well, thanks for Linda to bring up the word catalyst, because I think it's really a catalyst to see all this planetary population. There's like 8 billion people here. Majority of them, more than I think maybe 99 plus something % of them, despite their kind of evil creations and like dark creations, those are the entities that are struggling to really clear the karma and balance themselves and make a choice subconsciously at a metaphysical level. And looking at those people in the traffic, they're doing ridiculously selfish things. You see that like that guy is really, I could see like, energy state of that guy, and kind of make you feel compassionate your heart about it. Okay, you can give like an anger response, which I sometimes occasionally give, and it's okay to give impulsive reaction. But when you think about it, when you pull yourself, not in traffic, in everywhere, this is like you see the struggle of humanity, like you suggested, Jonathan. Like the semi-slavery economical system, everybody wants to keep to be employed, make money, and try to raise their kids. You see that, I mean, there's no time, and that's why you can see the struggle in the planet. You feel, you kind of, it's an opportunity for you to open your heart. It's a catalyst for you to polarize in the positive direction, to see those people, see the like feel the pain and humanity without pity, but with compassion.
Indeed. Yeah, and I would think that empathy, that compassion is really key to the service to others path. And as noted, we had an episode on service to others, service to self, where we went more in depth into this. But yeah, I think it would be fair to say for those on the service to self path, you really have to close your heart completely and not allow yourself to have any empathy at all for the pain or suffering of others. And in fact, those farther along the pain, I believe, take delight and joy in the pain and suffering of others as they control. Grace, did you have a hand up, something to share?
Yeah, I kind of had a question, maybe because Linda, what you said made me start thinking, and maybe I'm interested in your guys' thoughts, because thinking of like being in the sinkhole of indifference and all of this catalyst that comes up, that you can really use that to to polarize positively. What I see happening is people checking out. People are like, this is too much. The world's too messed up. I'm done with this. I'm out of here. It's like they aren't able to use that catalyst. I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
I agree with you 100%. But the only problem is if you don't use the catalyst, it's going to keep pounding on you.
Right.
If let's say you get fired from your job, well, that's a catalyst for you perhaps to change the direction of your life. But instead you fight your way against it and you keep on the same direction that you were going. That and like I said, you're still in the sinkhole. That catalyst is going to come back and come back and come back, getting worse and worse each time, by the way, probably. until you finally do something with it. So like you said, all these
Okay.
things that are attempting to keep you in the sinkhole of indifference, sooner or later, you know, it's just so much easier to get out, to make a
Thank you,
choice,
Linda.
to open yourself up to the creator, to
I
Indeed.
agree with Linda, and I have to say that you are really awakened in this planet with trauma. You can push the catalyst back, and if anybody came here with some traumatic past, then that forced that person to really seek something more real in their life. Be thankful to that trauma. You can clear your karma with that, and also you can really polarize yourself. That's actually one of the secrets of harvest. We awaken in this planet with trauma, and if you survey people who watch this video, probably have lots of trauma or similar type of catalyst. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great question, Grace. I appreciate your asking that, and I don't really have much of anything to add other than if our friends in the Confederation are right, then we're going to see lots more catalysts or opportunities to be of service to others or service to self. And that's part of the choice we all make. I would like to talk about something else. A question often comes up in the Law of One, whether harvest or graduation is the same thing as ascension. Those who, like me, came to the Law of One through David Wilcock have probably seen him use that word quite a few times in his books. And in February 2001, this was actually channeling by the entity known as Quo. For those who are new to the Law of One, Quo is a collaboration between the social memory complex of Ra at 6th density, Latui at 5th density, and Hatan at 4th density. So 3 different planetary consciousnesses, as if the consciousness of an entire planetary population merged into one, as we are destined to do on Earth at some point when we reach 4th density. These are 3 social memory complexes together as one, communicating as one, and they go by the name of Quo. That's, I should have put that there, Q'(UO). In this session, Quo said, the concept of ascension is a concept that we have found largely within your culture's Christian belief systems. The beliefs vary, but the basic commonality of this idea centers upon the concept of some entities being physically removed from the surface of the earth to safe places at a time when the remainder of the population of the earth will be destroyed by the end of the world or some other version of the apocalypse, whether the cause of it be man or spirit. It is not our understanding that this concept is a helpful one spiritually. It is not our opinion that this is the way things work in any physical sense. In our opinion, the processes of ascension or harvest are subsumed within the process of moving through the physical death and entrance into larger life, as this instrument would put it. The concept of the harvest of the earth is more than ascension in line with our understanding with the way things work metaphysically. Each of you is a spark of the Creator, and each of you may think of yourself in a way as that which has been planted in the earth, for you have been planted as a soul into flesh. And at the end of that work done within the school of life, the door of death opens, the Creator beckons, and through that door each goes. Upon the other side of that door, the decision for your harvest shall be made. However, it is not our understanding that this harvest is one of judgment placed upon one from the outside. Rather, it is a matter of that vibration, that you and how that vibratory energy field works. Each crystal soul accepts light in a certain range and finds it difficult to accept life outside of that range. It is not a punishment to repeat a grade. It is simply the right place for that soul that enjoys that range of light. If that spirit has stopped across that quantum divide between 3rd and 4th density, that entity may then choose to begin a series of incarnations in 4th density and can be said to have graduated from Earth's 3rd density. For each person, that experience will be unique. To our knowledge, there is no general harvest, but rather the individual harvest of each soul upon each soul's schedule. I really love that visual of each of you may think of yourself in a way as that which has been planted in the earth, for you have been planted as a soul into flesh. Beautiful visualization, and I think it helps the whole concept of the harvest make a little bit more sense to think of us that way, and that it's just part of this ongoing growth process, and that if we grow to that certain stage where we reach that vibrational state where we are thinking of others at least a little bit more than ourselves, then one could say we have graduated. But I like the part where they're saying it's not a matter of judgment. It's just like those liquids of different densities in the glass. It's not like one density is better than the other. You just go where your natural vibration is. Linda, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything from this?
No, I look at the harvest basically as what they're talking about here is a graduation, like a child graduates from one grade into another as their level of knowledge increases. You know, the only problem with a child graduating is they're often punished if they don't make the grade. And in the spiritual world, it's not that at all. I don't even know if there's going to be any type of celebration when we pass the finish line, so to speak. I have a feeling that it's just going to be something that is, and like I said, it puts us our vibration closer with that of the creator. But we still have so eons of expansion to go.
Well said. Yeah, they say many times you have all the time in the universe, and if you don't get as far as you want in this lifetime, then we'll eventually. There was one passage where they kind of talked about falling into the light. If you can imagine falling into the light, there's nothing you can do to prevent it. It might happen sooner, it might happen later, but sooner or later, we all fall into the light and become one with Creator.
I don't think there's
Baruch?
anything
Yeah, go
going
ahead.
backwards. I don't think you can go backward in density. In other words, you don't go
Right.
from third density and you're such a bad third density human that all of a sudden they're going to throw you back into the animal world. You're not going to find that happening. You will stay on third density until you make the choice one way or the other, is my belief, unless you know of
Yes.
anything different.
That's my understanding too. And thank you for bringing it up, because I mean, I think oftentimes people make jokes about reincarnating as a bug or a squirrel or a dolphin. I don't know what. I wish I could come back as a dolphin or something. But yeah, from my understanding too, we only progress upward. We don't go backwards in reincarnations. Baruch, Grace, did you have anything to add on this passage?
Yeah, I came back as a bug, just a stupid joke. The silent G in my name.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes. I mean, Linda, first of all, you sound like an entity ready to graduate to fourth, but also willing to come back for more service. Anyways, but okay, going back to the text, what I really see at this passage, I read it last night once you shared, Jonathan. I think it is really also like kind of, I mean, you have probably a different podcast entirely on energy centers, but this feels like, you know, harvestability is also related to how balanced your energy centers are. But balance means like once you are able to be graduated, doesn't mean that you are just perfectly balanced, like, you know, perfectly white entity, like, you know, just all chakras or energy centers are balanced, but you shine a different type of light. And Cole emphasizes the fact that everyone is unique, even at the harvest. You bring that unique package of experience and path coming from the source and going back to the source. So I think this passage to me is more like, okay, one of the criterions of harvestability to a certain extent, balancing the energy centers, which should be interrelated to harvestability through clearing karmas, also 51% polarization. I see these concepts are all coming hand to hand, but the manifestation of it is to have eventually balanced energy centers. But the reason I'm bringing it up, for harvestability, I think Carla has a beautiful book called Law of 101 Choice. I
Living
think
the law of one.
Living
Yeah.
the Law of One, and it's just that book describes like, you know, how you can balance those energy centers. So if anyone has the feeling that in their heart that, okay, I need to work on my harvest, they can also go refer back to that text, which is
Well
related
said.
to like balancing of these energy centers.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, and reminds me of another thing that I appreciate by the law of one, that they are definitely not saying that one religion is better than another, that all paths have truth to them, and that, yeah, they do bring in a lot of Eastern spirituality. They talk a lot about karma, and they talk a lot about chakras, as they're known in Hindu system, but they refer to them as energy centers. But there was a very, very strong correlation between energy centers and chakras. They seem more or less the same as far as I can tell. Grace, did you have anything to add?
For me, I guess I'm just thinking about, again, how this is framed in reference to like my Christian background, which kind of said, you know, you die, and if you're a good person, you go to heaven, and that's it, and you did it. And I recently found out that in Mormonism, there's actually tiers of heaven, which was really confusing to me. That blew my mind. This just gives each person, again, that sense of accountability and responsibility. Once you understand that you are light, you are a piece of the creator, and you, as you evolve and expand, you're getting more light. And you can do that here in third density by, you know, being service to others or service to self. Once you understand that, I feel like you can make choices in alignment with that goal. And it's just, it's beautiful. And it's really, again, on that personal level, you know, change happens within each individual. You know, you can't force anyone to change. And this just, when, you know, once you pass over to the other side, it's what you did is what you did.
Indeed, indeed. Let's take a look at another passage here. This is also from Quo, and I remembered to put the name there this time. This was from November 86, and they said, the concept of an instantaneous harvest has not been helpful, we have observed, and we would discourage each from contemplating harvest as an event. For although we are not within your illusion, although we who are not within your illusion see your harvest as what seems to us to be, shall we say in your terms, an afternoon's excitement, a cause for rejoicing that is all too short, yet we cannot translate our time to yours, for your time is that of planets revolving about a sun, and it is not the time of the timeless one, which dwells in infinity and moves in light. How greatly you desire to know when you should be ready, when you should be prepared, and yet we say to you, it is this moment that you must be prepared and that you must be ready. And if you are not ready now, then you must work now, pray now, meditate now, surrender now, and ask now to be channels for the love and light of the one original thought of love, which is the Creator. So much to look at in this passage. I like that part about afternoon's excitement. It's just a reminder that, yeah, these planetary consciousnesses known as Ra and Latui and Quo, they are literally millions of years ahead of us in spiritual evolution, at least 100 million years ahead of us in spiritual evolution. So everything that we see as a big deal right now is really just a very, very small blip in time scale that they're looking through, and doesn't make it any less stressful as we're living through it now. But again, I think that is part of the gift of the law of one. It gives you a little bit of a wider context, you could say, for seeing things that seem like a big deal right now. Bora, did you have any thoughts, reflections on this passage?
I have many thoughts, but please shut me up when I talk too much. First of all, this is really beautiful in the sense that it tells us we don't see this as a cataclysm event, like, you know, okay, people die, like there's a massive transition to death, and then everybody's harvested. It's not happening like that. Harvest is ongoing right now. So, okay, if I die, I will be probably tested for harvest at the end of this incarnation. It is relevant for everyone. And there's also other passages saying that maybe you may have one chance because if the vibration of the earth and yourself kind of matches, you may have one more chance. But I think we're coming to the end. Like this probably is likely the last incarnation or the last before the last one. So in that manner, okay, harvest is ongoing for a while for many people, or your grandma maybe passed away 5-10 years ago, or somebody's going to pass away later, etc. That's my understanding. But the second paragraph, I think we can talk for hours. I think it's really powerful that they're really warning us, okay, like Linda said, anything that we bank as incarnations and incarnations and incarnations, repeating of the third density again and again, could be an enriching experience for the path that we're following back to the source. But individualistically speaking, I think all of our guidance systems, all of our higher selves, and before we incarnate to this life plan, we kind of set up everything so that we can really harvest, go back home where we can more freely breathe. And for that reason, they are emphasizing the inner work. And by inner work, I think there will be more passages coming. I have to emphasize it then. I talked enough, but I will come back to inner work because I took so many notes on that. I think it's really important because in my personal case, I taught service and harvest always an outwork, but inner work is so important. So this paragraph kind of elucidates that, like pray now, meditate now, surrender now. Just simply know yourself 50% of your time and energy, even if you're cleaning the house. Some inner source, that consciousness presence watches you and everything you do, and you can be harvested, which is good for you.
Well said. Yeah, inner work would be a great subject for another episode for this podcast for sure, as would chakras and energy centers. Grace, did you have anything to add? Anything to share on this passage?
No, that was good.
Linda, any thoughts, reflections to share on this passage?
No, I think that last paragraph there says it all.
Indeed. Yeah, thinking of harvest as a process rather than an event, I think is probably a good way to look at it. I did want to take a look at something that has come up already in our discussion, and that is the idea of karma and karmic restitution. As far as what this is and what this has to do with where we're at. Again, in April 2006, Quo said, "Your Earth shall become, in the fullness of time, a fourth density positive planet. However, there is a golden period that is coming for your people. It is a time when those entities who have graduated third density and who are very concerned with the karmic patterns of their past are going to be able to create a time of restitution on planet Earth. Those entities among you at this time that are attempting to graduate service to self will have moved on. Those entities who remain upon your planet shall be those positively oriented entities whose concerns involve restitution to this planet. These entities are hoping not to graduate, but rather to go to a kind of summer school, if you will, where they can free themselves of the habit of carelessness. For it is a careless thing to misuse the environment. It is a careless thing to misuse people, relationships, societal entities, and groups. So this is a time of great excitement and hope upon your planet. Many are attempting to graduate, and many who do not feel that they can graduate at this time are attempting to make restitution so that they are free of the karma of having destroyed or hurt the planetary beings upon which they lived in the past." This would be a time to note for folks who are new to the law of one. According to what we've been told in these channelings by our friends in the Confederation being a whole bunch of these different planetary entities who have committed to working together to help planets like us to grow and evolve spiritually. Apparently, they have said the majority of people who are incarnated on Earth at this time actually came from other planets, and specifically other planets that destroyed themselves in the past. Mars, for example, is a planet that apparently had life upon it and was rendered uninhabitable by people who kind of, as they said here, were careless about their environment and not taking care of it. What we refer to now as the asteroid belt was apparently a planet called Maldek, which likewise blew itself to smithereens because of this carelessness and this inability to live in harmony and to balance power. Atlantis would be an example of a world on this planet that likewise destroyed itself through its service to self tendencies that were couched in rhetoric of service to others. So what they're saying here is that there's a lot of karmic restitution. A lot of entities have incarnated here to try to make up for having blown up their planets or their worlds in the past, or having rendered them uninhabitable. So that is why, perhaps, as you look at the collection of what we might describe as people, crazy people out there who seem to be having a really hard time grasping simple things of how to get along with others, or just how to take basic care of our planet. This gives you a little bit of a different context to put it in. Grace, any thoughts on this passage?
Yeah, I guess based on what you just said, it's almost like people struggle with the idea of sustainability almost. It's like we're doing things and we're not, taking responsibility or accountability for the things that we're doing. And that in turn does make karma. I guess I have a question. When I was reading this, it caught my attention. In the first paragraph, it says for third density, excuse me, I'd said who are very concerned with the karmic patterns of their past. So is that when you guys read this, is that saying that it's only for entities who want to rid their karma? What if you have accumulated karma, but you're okay with that? You've forgiven yourself, you've forgiven whatever the heck, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? What is the differentiation here?
I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking, but if Linda or
Like,
Bora do, feel free to respond.
Okay, I agree with you that this to me is kind of at variance. In my opinion, once you have generated negative karma, this karma can be alleviated by forgiveness, by total forgiveness.
right.
And so I don't understand why they feel they have to have karmic retribution if they have gone through the process of totally forgiving themselves for the issues that they caused.
Right. That's where I'm kind of confused because in the raw channelings and subsequent quote channelings, they talk about how you're able to bring your catalyst and the issues up into your heart center and forgive and accept things. So I'm confused about when it's referring to people who are very concerned about the karmic patterns.
And people, not only that, but people that are really close to graduating, or also here it almost talks like the people that are right on the verge, they
Right.
decide to come back and have, quote, their little summer school so they can work through these issues. If you're right on the verge, I thought for sure that you would have alleviated that karma, because you're not going to be carrying karma from third density into fourth density with you. I don't think.
That's a great question. That's an interesting thought, interesting discussion. I hadn't really even thought of it that way. I'm guessing, and again, I'm just throwing out my guesses and my opinions, for folks who had previous incarnations on, let's say, Mars or Maldek or Atlantis, where it was just this long habitual patterns that led to the total destruction of their worlds. I think part of what they're doing here is to try to clean up that. Maybe part of the getting to the point where you can forgive yourself is doing a little bit of work to help the planet and maybe to try to undo some of the karma from the damage that you did on previous planets. I think as we look around and see there's so many challenges that we're facing in terms of our really hurting the planet in so many different ways, of polluting its air and its water and its soil and everything else. I know that there are a lot of people who feel really committed, really called to doing something to take better care of the planet. And I'd like to think that has to do perhaps with some trying to do some karmic cleanup. Bora, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the beginning of the second paragraph, I think they describe a time that's going to come in future where the planetary vibration is not going to sustain any service to self. And those entities will be moved on, they will be tested for their harvest, they will go back to a third density planet or fourth density negative consciousness planet, they will move on. And in that time, there will still be a time for third density human population to really which probably without too much of the negative effects coming from top down, they are able to probably create a climate of maybe more empathetic opportunities to clear their karma that comes from these past experiences, either on this planet or other planets from all their past. But I genuinely think that you can't, I believe, it's my personal opinion, but I think also karmic law is the motor engine of the experience. We cannot really graduate with karmic debt. I think it's a big blockage at our lower energy centers in terms of our, like, especially with our root family, work family, and maybe not necessarily loving everyone as a person, but accepting at least the planet and both sides of the polarity as they are, as the other self, without really balancing these. And it takes time, I believe. It's not like happening like that. It's probably takes a lifetime to clear that and balance that. You don't graduate before that. And hopefully there's going to be an Cole says that there will be a time where positively oriented entities which have karma against each other too, unloving intentions and energies against each other coming from the past, will have an opportunity to clear that, which is great news.
Indeed. Linda, Grace, anything to add on this before we move on? That's good. I have a few passages that I wanted to look at together that address questions of what harvest or graduation will look like and what kind of things we can expect to see in the future. From 1986, this was a channeling of an entity that identified itself as Lilima, another member of the Confederation of Planets and the Service of the Infinite Creator, as that group is known. In this passage, Lilima says, "The question of the numbers of entities to be harvested and the number not harvested comes before those of the Confederation frequently. And we hasten to remind each that because of free will, the numbers can only be approximate. Approximately 8 to 9% of your population at this time, that is somewhere in the area of 360 million people, this instrument is telling us that we may have slipped a digit. We do not scan that phrase, however. We understand percentage, and that is percentage may already be harvested, given that reading between this reading and the event of each entity's leaving incarnational experience and entering into the light. Each entity remains at harvestable levels of service to others or service to self. In addition, there are many, many entities who, although they are aware that their lives in this incarnation may not be very long, are willing and eager to make one more attempt to graduate. Thus, you have being born at this time many strong and sometimes disruptive entities who are old souls desperately in search of the lifting of a veil which is felt but not understood. As children, they will sometimes seem older, sometimes incredibly young, but always strong, willful, and very much each his own person. These entities will polarize with the determination of steamrollers, and it should be an interesting generation upon your planet, interesting alike for those who bear them and for themselves. It is completely unknown, and shall we say, even odds, that all these entities shall or shall not graduate. Therefore, we give no percentage, but only advise each who considers the bearing of children that it is a service to many an old soul, and in addition, a service to those pioneers of fourth density vibration that shall be the nucleus of the beginning of fourth density on this planet, that being a positive fourth density as already determined by the fact that you are very near critical mass for a harvest. Now we reach the heart of the question. When something achieves a critical mass, a given reaction begins. In this case, the mass necessary to be reached has as its desired result the formation of a social memory complex, that being a planetary consciousness, as if all of humanity merged into one planetary consciousness. an approximate 10% of a population able to entrain vibrations to fourth density levels within the self, and moreover, able and willing to form a larger self and offering the self to the group identity are necessary. We do not mean to suggest that the other entities hitherto unharvestable shall then be positively harvestable, for each entity chooses its own time of harvest, and neither darkness or light shall be thrust upon any third density entity any more than the darkness and the light shall be released from any entity in sixth density. However, what makes this planet remain populated by its natives of third density in the next density is this critical mass of natives which are able to form the nucleus of that group, which shall then become the Earth, as you call it, social memory complex. Social memory complexes was our last podcast episode, so you can go to that episode to watch more detailed discussion. Otherwise, wow, there is a lot to unpack from this passage. I think most notably, kind of a callback to what we were talking about earlier in the session, where we were saying the number that have been harvested were really small in the past. I believe Ross said in the first 25,000 year cycle, there was no harvest. Nobody reached graduation level for service to others or service to self. And in the second 25,000 year cycle, there were only 150 people on the planet at that time who were harvestable, shall we say, who graduated to fourth density. But given what we're reading here, as I think Linda was suggesting, yeah, it looks like in the intervening time, there are a lot more. And if we look at the 8 to 9% of the population, I believe the current world population is about 8 billion. So you're talking about roughly 800 million people potentially being harvestable at this time, which is a lot, but still a small percentage. Linda, any thoughts on anything from this long passage?
Not at the moment, but I'm interested in hearing what everyone else has to offer.
Sure. Grace, any thoughts on this passage?
I guess for me, I think of it more of like a personal lens. I'm like, okay, so am I a wanderer or am I one of these steamrollers who really, really wants to graduate? And I think it's funny because as a parent, I'm also like, oh my gosh, I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm like, oh yes, he is extremely his own person and very much himself already. He already has a sense of self at 8 years old. And I think of myself at 8 years old, and I'm like, wow, I wasn't even like conscious. Like I had 2 brain cells and they weren't touching, you know what I mean? So I really think about that. And it's very interesting to just kind of hypothesize maybe your own roots and what you might be doing here.
I love those 2 paragraphs that are on the screen, and I'm guessing there are quite a few people who are watching this who have children who could be described as strong and sometimes disruptive and very much their own person and polarizing with the determination of steamrollers. I love that visual. That is so great. Bora, any thoughts on this? Anything from this whole passage?
Yeah, I'm even more optimistic than what it is told in 1986. I think this was exactly 34, no, not 34, 38 years ago. This passage came. I think like it should be more than 10%, right? Considering the seniority of the vibration, more people, more souls are incarnating that is closer to their harvest, and the new generation is coming with super, how to say, empathetic sense and ready to harvest, and they're really like creating those life patterns and life stories that are forcing them to face the catalyst and accept it. I think it's going to be a fun future for this planet, and I have very optimistic sense regarding that. So those who watch this, yeah, I think this is a great news for our planet. Like when I first heard the word from Ra that the harvest is going to be small, I wasn't even considering like 10%. Right now I think we should be well above that, and it's great. Kudos to everyone who contributed that.
Yeah, and I might have misspoken a little bit earlier. I think what I was thinking of was the paragraph on the screen, where I believe they're suggesting in order for the whole planet to graduate for all of humanity, you don't need to have all 8 billion on the people achieve harvestability. What they're saying is you just need a critical mass. You need as small as 10% of the population that is of that vibration of fourth density of service to others, that is of harvestable or, yeah, harvestable vibration in order to move the needle enough. I think it goes back to the image of moving the needle. You only need about 10% of the population that is able to move that needle to service to others to enable the whole planet to graduate as a whole. And as they were saying somewhere earlier on, that doesn't necessarily mean that all 8 billion people are going to graduate. As they said, each person is still on their own timetable. So some people might have to repeat third density on another planet because, as they're saying, this planet will be fourth density positive, which I would think is kind of encouraging. Linda, anything to share at this point?
But the only thing that slipped into my mind there was that sounds very Sodom and Gomorrah-ish. The fact when they were trying to see if there was any good souls left in Sodom and Gomorrah as to whether or not the city should be spared. And they were coming up with percentages. Well, if you have this many that are, then we can spare it. Otherwise, you're going to go down the drains. Just for some reason, that's what popped into my head.
I don't think that's necessarily what they're saying, because it's certainly not like the Earth is going to go up in flames if we don't achieve high enough graduation rate. But I think they are saying, just like that clock that strikes the hour, they've spoken a lot about this like three-dimensional galactic clock face, and that as you can imagine, as planets and solar systems and galaxy move through space, they're kind of like the hands of a clock. And at some point, this 75,000 year cycle is going to come to an end, and whoever's harvestable at that point gets harvested. And if the planet is able to become a social memory complex at that point, then it will. But you can be sure that service to self entities are doing everything they can to prevent that from happening, because I think they realize they can't turn Earth into a service to self planet, because the vast majority of people on this planet really prefer to live in a world of love and light rather than in a world of fear and darkness. So they know they can't make the whole planet graduate service to self, but the best they can do is delay it, or do the best they can to keep people from polarizing and making that choice. I have another couple passages to look at. This is from the Raw Contact. This was in session 17. The questioner asks, will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in environment and our effect upon the environment? Ra, I am Ra. The fourth density is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your what we would call galaxy, what you call star, into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vortices of reception of the instreaming of cosmic forces expressing themselves as vibrational webs, so that the Earth will thus be fourth density magnetized, as you might call it. This is going to occur with some inconvenience, as we have said before, due to the energies of the thought forms of your peoples, which disturb the orderly constructs of energy patterns within your Earth spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment while making itself appropriately magnetized for fourth density. This is the planetary adjustment. You will find a sharp increase in the number of people, as you call mind-body-spirit complexes, whose vibrational potentials include the potential for fourth vibrational distortions. Thus, there will seem to be, shall we say, a new breed. These are those incarnating for fourth density work. There will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind-body-spirit complexes and social complexes due to the polarizing conditions of the sharp delineation between the fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. Those who remain in fourth density upon this planet will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all the best efforts of the Confederation, which includes those from your people's inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than that which this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. I would think for folks who are new to the Law of One, it would be encouraging to learn that this planet is, in fact, going to be a fourth density positive planet, and that everything is going to be okay, and that those who are of service to self are going to have to find another planet to continue their journeys on. But I like this part that's highlighted where they're saying that there will be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind, body, spirit complexes due to the sharp delineation as we go through this polarization. Again, this was channeled back in the very early 80s. So as we look around and see the intense level of polarization in our society and our political arenas and such, this again, I thought was a really interesting prediction that they made 40 years ago that seems to be playing out really well. And I can only assume will increase as we get deeper and deeper into fourth density. We're going to see more and more of this polarization effect of people being compelled to choose service to others or service to self. Bora, did you have any thoughts on anything from this passage?
The only thing that comes to mind, as more people or more entities coming to the planet for positive harvest or understanding and accepting the big catalyst, and they're clearing their karmic debt, obviously some negative negative side is going to reappear with the sharp edges inevitably, because people need, all the entire planet needs, the population needs that type of catalyst. So we need to really approach this. This is kind of the inevitable outcome of the natural process, because for us to really positively polarize more, there should be a better contrast. Similarly, like if in order to have a light, you need to really have a contrast of dark or black, there should be white. Otherwise, there will be no meaning of any concepts. Or there's, yeah.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Linda, any thoughts, reflections on that?
I was going to speak to the thought of the earthly inconveniences that they speak of. I do know of a number of groups that are metaphysically working with Mother Gaia to limit or to alleviate this disruptions as much as possible. And they apparently are having great success in doing so. Mother Gaia is such a loving planet. She doesn't want the people here inconvenienced by her having to go through these birth pains. And so they're working with her to help alleviate a lot of the issues that could come up. So I think we owe these groups a great debt of gratitude for what they are doing to assist the earth and the people.
Well said indeed. Yes, we add our thanks. Grace, anything to add?
That was beautiful. I'm just wondering, what we can do as individuals to help these groups in their process, I know that LNL Research hosted that Gaia meditation group and, easing suffering around the world. That was really cool. I'm wondering if there's anything now that we could do.
That's a great question. Linda,
Morris
would you
and
mind speaking about?
Morris and I, every morning, between the two of us and whoever else, we also call in all the other spirits on the planet who happen to be in meditation at that point. We do an earthly healing meditation where we call in the angelic forces, the Confederation, Miss Carla, all our spirit guides and everything. If anybody ever wants to contact us and ask how to be part of, so that we're all meditating at the same time, I mean, it's wonderful. We've got the place in our room just buzzing with the energy and of all the love that we're creating for the planet there. But even if you don't want to join with our group, do it by yourself every single day. Send earth, love, and light, and call in all the forces to assist you in doing so.
You can do it anytime, and I'm sure it is helpful. For sure. I did want to note that our Seattle Law of One study group, when we do meet on Zoom, we do 20-minute group meditations every time, pretty much for that purpose. I'd like to think that it is helping. Bora, did you have any thoughts on
No, I just
anything
pray.
Grace was asking about?
No, I just pray may you, Linda, Morris, and other people like yourself have a long, healthy lives with open heart. I think with every breath, I think this planet, that's the only thing that we need. Just breathe with the open heart and the prayer and meditation.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
You got it there, honey. That's just our presence here in this earth is doing tremendous good for Mother Earth. We don't really have to do anything. We just have to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and our friends in Confederation have said that breath is sacred. And that literally, just like you said, breathing out and maybe consciously breathing out that love, light that you have taken in and channeled through you is one of the best ways to be of service to others, for sure. Grace, anything to add or any follow-ups or any other thoughts to share?
No, that was beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for asking. I did want to note, in that paragraph that starts with the words, "This is going to occur with some inconvenience." Yeah, our friends in the Confederation have said many, many, many times that the hundreds, thousands of years of what they call bellicosity, just the violent tendencies, the warfare that has happened over so many centuries of empire after empire after empire, war after war after war, just the conditioning that we've had up to recent times to solve problems with violence really creates on a vibrational level these vibrations that apparently go into the earth through our feet or whatever, and have caused a large amount of heat to be stored up beneath our planet's surface that as they are referring to Earth spirals of energy, which increases entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment. What they're saying is that Mother Earth has to release that energy some way, and that it could be done like in sudden, strong terms, like an earthquake or a volcano, for example, would be one way of releasing that heat. But as Linda has alluded to, so much of the work that we do as spiritual beings is to love the planet and to try to help that planet lighten its energies and help release that energy in little bits so that it doesn't have to be one big cataclysmic event. It's kind of a big deal. Let's take a look at another passage. This is one that I also think might be comforting to some folks. In chapter 17, the questioner, session 17 of the Raw Contact, questioner asks, "Can you tell me why the Earth will be a fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems there is a greater negative population?" Ra says, "I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. That is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your space-time present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality." This I found hugely relieving because, yes, before I discovered the Law of One, not that long ago, it was during the pandemic, about 3 years ago or so, yes, I think quiet horror would be a really good way to describe it. And not so quiet horror is what I was experiencing as I was looking at the chaos and craziness unfolding in the world beyond. But to see that the Earth seems to be negative, but in fact, is destined to be positive because the number of people who are really oriented towards the positive path far outnumber those on the negative path. And at least in terms of harvestability, the numbers are not particularly close. I find that really encouraging. Panelists, anybody else have any thoughts, reflections on this passage? I'll just throw it out to anybody.
I mean, this goes back to, again, that view of, it's just we are surrounded by people who are really struggling to really open their heart, but they are just bound to be karmically involved, or just they're confused. You may have a confused boss, confused someone in traffic you must be very angry at. people creating inconveniences left and right in your life. But bear in mind, this is just they just act negatively, but in fact they need your love and acceptance. You cannot love everyone as a human and person, but you can accept the self and other self as the creator, as the one.
Well, I believe that is what we are called to do, to love all unconditionally, regardless of how much we might hate them or dislike them or find them distasteful otherwise. Grace, Linda, any thoughts on this?
Oh, that was
Um,
perfectly said.
Yes, Vera, very well said. I'm thinking of a recent channeling by Quo where they said that everything external to you is a mirroring effect. So I think about when we see these cataclysms and when we see these people who are just, you're like, what the hell are you doing? And you feel that frustration and you see their dysfunction. At some level, there is that within you. And so what we can do as spiritual seekers is really take the time when we see these things, is at the end of the day, just sit with it, sit with those feelings, those discomforts, sit with all of these things. And when you see somebody do something, you're like, wow, like I would never do that. I think that there's the realization that, wait, there is a part in you somewhere that would do that thing. And so we have to sit with these things and we have to put them in our hearts and transmute them. And I think that's what we're called to do.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And it reminds me of something I learned about a while ago called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are part of our wiring that enables us to, when we see something happening to somebody else in our minds, it's like we experience it happening to ourselves. So if you see somebody like falling down a flight of steps or something, each of us like instinctively feels like a little bit of that pain inside as if it was happening to ourselves. And in a way, you could say it's part of the wiring we have that enables us to not distinguish between others and ourselves because we are all one. And that's a beautiful part of our learning, I think. I would like to go ahead and take a look at the big question that a lot of people have, which is, how can I be sure to graduate to fourth density or to return to my home density if I came from a higher density? In 2005, Quo said, "The most helpful way to progress quickly is never to unmake a choice. However, we find that is almost inevitable in third density, that entities will make and unmake choices repeatedly, not always being consistent. And each time that the inconsistency occurs, and the choice to love without condition, or whatever choice of an ethical nature that you have made, is then rescinded, this changes your vibratory level. It is not possible to hold on to past glory. Rather, the most helpful thing to be before your mind is always the moment and the choice of this moment. Secondly, in this regard, we would note that to those who perceive at the heart level the absolute centrality of service to others as a polarized choice, it is close to inevitable that at the moment of death and the entry into graduation, your vibratory level will reflect that basic choice. Once you have awakened and begun the process of spiritual seeking, the odds are heavily in your favor that your vibratory level at that time will reflect a satisfactory level of service to others polarity for you to be able to have the opportunity to graduate. We say this in order to take away the feeling of needing to pass a test. It is the essence of the grasping of the centrality of the choice of service to others as a polarity that is the most substantial part of how your energy body will be vibrating at the time of your passing through that gateway, rather than the day-to-day details that vary according to those transient and ephemeral circumstances that come and go, rise and fall away again in the course of any lifetime. Therefore, rather than being overly concerned about any one choice, any one day, or any one action, keep moving back in your mind to the central point and to your first faithful choice of polarity. Affirm and reaffirm that choice. This is your fulcrum. This is the source of your power as a choice-making spiritual seeker. Then each day, let the day be a new one, and see what you can do to make this day a day in which you have upheld that basic choice to the very best of your ability as a spiritual seeker." Reminds me, it's just one of those many things that I really love about the Law of One. I just find so much love and wisdom and spiritual love and wisdom in these passages that I really haven't found anywhere else. There's some good stuff in the Bible, to be sure, but not nearly the amount that I see here, or maybe from the Dalai Lama. Just haven't really heard the Dalai Lama say anything like this. Really do like this passage, and I know it reminds me, some folks have asked the question, well, what happens if the day I die, I just had a really bad day, and I was in a really shitty mood that day, and I was in a really pissy mood and was not really thinking of service to others? Is that going to mess things up? And I like how they're saying here that, no, it's not about what you did on any one day or any one moment. It's really just about your vibration as a whole, and where is your whole completely. So it's not about passing a pencil and paper test or answering questions the right way. I just find that a really beautiful and inspiring thing. Panelists, anybody else have any thoughts on anything from this passage?
That passage basically says it to me perfectly. If someone asks me the question of how do you graduate, all you have to do, number one, is to make the choice and then set your spirituality, which has been awakened by making that choice, into tune with that and keep it in harmony.
Indeed. And I think that's part of the key, the reason for this podcast's existence, to let folks know who weren't aware that there was a choice to be made, that there is, in fact, a choice to be made, and that life is not completely random, and that you were actually born here for a reason, and that you did actually plan things out in this incarnation to help you grow spiritually, and hopefully to make this choice and commit to it as best you can. Grace, Bora, anything to add?
For me, I guess I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts, because when I read this, it was comforting, but at the same time, I'm thinking back to, like, the day-to-day life. And, probably at least once a day, I'm just fucking around doing something. And then I get to this point and I'm like, I'm doing something and I'm like, wait a second, I should be doing this for somebody else. Or like, wait a second, is what I'm doing in service to myself or in service to others? And then I consciously make a choice then to maybe not derail what I'm doing, but do something else, do something different that's in service to others. And I know it is about your intention to do well, but I guess for me on a daily basis, I'm, constantly checking myself, and I'm like, wait, is this in service to others? Like, what I'm not in those exact words, but I mean, like, I'll be making dinner or something, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should get this for my son first versus me first, and like just small things like that. And it's like the details almost. I'm wondering what you guys think about that, or if you do something similar.
I think you're
I think it's your potty mouth that's going to be a problem for you, young lady. Jesus Christ. How do you expect to graduate to fourth density when you're dropping F-bombs on a metaphysical podcast, for God's sake?
Not allowed. Demoted to a
Come
lizard.
on, you can always curse with love. I can
Yeah,
see you using F word with so
yes.
much green ray coming to me, and I loved it.
Yes, for sure. Yes. Flocks of people have turned off their videos because of that, I'm sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate this is how I talk with friends, and I consider everyone here on this panel a friend, and I consider everyone watching this a friend too. So let those F-bombs fly, as they are honestly felt from the heart. What do you think, Linda? That's, as always, Grace is asking really great
Ray,
questions. Any thoughts on that?
forgive yourself for being human. I mean, you're not doing anything wrong in making these daily decisions. I remember when I first made the choice, I would have an alarm set in the background that would, like, click, beep at me every 2 hours, so that I could take myself from where I was at, refocus my spirituality, and then continue to go from there. And then after a while, that becomes a habit. That it becomes so much of a habit, you don't have to have that phone beeping at you every 2 hours, causing you to refocus.
That's a
But,
great point.
for God's sakes, I can't tell you how many times a day I've been sitting there and having my mind go off on some weird tangent, especially when I was watching, like, these conventions going on, these political conventions,
Yeah.
and my mind is going off into some dark places, and all you got to do is just take you and refocus it back on the track.
Well said. Bura, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago when I discovered Law of One, and this material was through a guide on YouTube, and the first thing I discovered was a video about harvest. It freaked me out, and I was worse than Linda. Like I was focusing on, I mean, like, okay, I mean, this resonates with me, all this material and what this guy is talking. And by the way, he was a friend of Carla. I might have mentioned to you, he wrote a book about harvest in Turkish, and Carla had like a 5-page foreword on that book. So, and he told me that his only guidance system is through Ra and co-material and Confederation of Planets. That's why I'm free to speak about his teachings here. Anyways, he helped me a lot. Miraculous things happened during my time with him. Was miraculous. Like 3 months I spent on YouTube and via online teachings with him. That put me in discipline, but you never like walk in the apex and the hills. Like you sometimes go to the valleys and you feel like you are keeping the rope loose, and like you're not meditating enough, but it's part of the process. I think, like this passage says, there's a life plan we have, and this is a long marathon. It's not just about the moments, but having that heart open, observing you and realizing like and seeing everything with that presence. Whenever you have the opportunity, it just becomes more frequent, and when it becomes
So
like more than 50% of the time and energy, and I think we should aim more than 51, honestly. Like we are so blessed to have this
you
material
want
in
to
front
raise
of
the
us.
bar on it? Is that what you're saying?
No, like I'm saying like 51 is for maybe enough for graduation, but don't you, I mean, your harvest is the harvest and service to the planet. If you aim like 80%, maybe that open heart observes most of the things you do, and you still become that egoic person. Still,
Indeed.
I think it's better for everyone, including yourself and this
Indeed.
and your friends, the family, and whoever those confused people that you came here for.
Well said.
It's
Grace, I have a question for you. Looking at yourself, would you say that you're a more loving, kind person now than you were a year or 2 years ago?
100%. Every day, I find myself just coming into myself so much more. And that level of authenticity that you get, it's so beautiful, because when you really become your authentic self, you are so happy. You love yourself and you love everyone, and it's beautiful. And so that's what this material helped me do.
Well, I appreciate your saying that, because I was really thinking about the question you're asking, and I think comparing oneself to somebody else like Mother Teresa or Jesus Christ or Gandhi or something is probably not the greatest way to do it, but just comparing yourself to yourself and where you
Right.
were. For me, that's been a big deal. I mean, I recognize that I still have a long way to go to not be judgmental about people I have whatever kind of disagreements with. But yeah, I think I could honestly say I am a more loving, more kind, more open-hearted, compassionate person now than I was a year or 2 years ago. So I think, as they're saying in this passage, just make the choice, know that there's a choice to be made, commit to it, and just give it your best and put your heart into it every day. Do the best you can, and I think it'll be fine. Why don't we go ahead and wrap things up here, shall we? Where do we go from here? This is the part of the podcast where we try to take all the info dump that we threw at you for the last hour and a half or whatever, and try to give you a couple takeaway lessons to remember. So if I could think of 3 things to take away from this episode, I would say first thing is make a choice: service to others or service to self, and commit to it. If you were not aware that there was a choice to be made, then consider this a great awakening for you on this day. And as we just said, commit to it as best you can. And second, be yourself on the deepest level possible. Our friends in Confederation have said many, many times that being of service to others really isn't so much about the outer work. It's not about volunteering to work in a soup kitchen. It's not about any outward actions or things that we do. It's really just about being yourself on the deepest level possible, because each of us is the one infinite creator, and expressing that through your own way as best you can is really the best way to be of service, especially if that means, as Bura referred to, doing the inner work, finding those places where you're still hurt inside, healing that trauma inside is the best way you can do to heal the planet. And lastly, just remember that fourth density is the density of unconditional love. So if you really want to graduate to fourth density, the best way is to learn how to love unconditionally. And again, that doesn't mean just the people that you already like. It means everybody, including the people that you really, really have the hardest time with. Love them as yourself in another body. Love them as another creator in another body. Because it goes back to what we said at the beginning. The law of one is that all is one, that all is the creator. And that means everyone that you meet is creator in another body. Panelists, did you have any last thoughts, reflections on any of this before we have a little pop quiz? Linda, any last thoughts, reflections on any of this stuff?
I just wish you all joy upon your journey, and believe me, it's going to be exciting. That's all I have.
Nice.
What
Bura?
about you?
I mean, if you're confused at the end of this podcast, come to the Seattle group. Join us with the conversation. I don't know. I hope I can be more committed. But again, there must be a lot of questions. Just go read the books from Carla, material from LL Research. It's a long journey, but I think you're on the right track, especially if you're watching videos like this one. No way I'm saying that
premium
I'm
content here, let me tell you. Yeah. Grace, any last thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, like Burra said, I mean, if you're here and watching this video, you're already where you need to be. You know, if you feel called to it, read the books, the raw material, read the channelings on LL Research. They make it all free. It's all available. And just wishing everyone so much love and light.
Well said, indeed. There is one more passage that I thought might be good to end with, and that is from June 1987. Kuo said, "All that remains from any experience within your illusion, and all that is ever recorded within the nature of the soul, is love. Whatever experience of love one is able to create and to share within any relationship or experience within your illusion is remembered and is gathered as the true harvest of the incarnation. All else is but a means to this end." It's one of my favorite passages. It's the only passage that I actually have printed out on paper and taped up on the wall, but it is such a great reminder that love is all that matters, and that any experiences you have of actual open heart love with anyone else, that's the stuff that actually you carry with you from one incarnation to the next, and everything else that we do here is just a means to that end. For those of you who want to leave on that note, I want to thank you for being here with us and for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We are thinking of you as you are thinking of us, and sending you our love light and receiving yours. For those who want to totally fuck up the mood and have some cheap laughs about today, about totally crude and inappropriate things, stick around for the pop quiz. I promise I will not say any mean things about you after you leave. All right. So, anyone who is not here, and thought those fucking assholes would never leave. Let's have some fun, shall we? Pop quiz, of course, is a phrase that Carla used to use a lot to refer to the little pop quizzes that we get in daily life to see if we have, in fact, learned how to love others unconditionally, or if we have learned to the lessons that we came here to incarnate. Since the theme of this episode has been on harvest or graduation, today's pop quiz is on American colleges and universities. I am going to ask panelists 3 multiple choice questions about American colleges and universities. See how many you can answer correctly. As always, the points don't matter. If you had fun, you won. Those of you watching this on video, go ahead, say your answers to yourself or any other selves that you might be watching. And speaking of colleges or universities, you could think of this as a drinking game. Take a shot or take a bong hit for any question that you answer incorrectly, and it'll be even more fun. Panelists, are you ready for your first question?
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Your first question is, what was the first, sorry, I'm having a hard time with my visuals. Wow. What was the first American university? Was it A, Harvard, B, Yale, or C, College of William and Mary? Panelists, just go ahead and shout out your answers, whatever you think.
I'll think it's C.
I would say C.
B.
Did you say B or C?
B as in boy.
Sounds good. The correct answer, in fact, is Harvard. Harvard was founded in 1636. The College of William and Mary is the second oldest, founded in 1693, and Yale is the 4th oldest, founded in 1701. So panelists, just for the fun of it, where did you go to college and what did you study? I went to UC Davis and graduated with philosophy. Where'd you go, Grace? Did you go to college? Did any, all panelists, did we go to college? Where did we go? Grace?
Yeah, I mean, college degrees are totally overrated, but I do have one from the University of North Florida, and I'm currently pursuing a Master in Social Work at Florida Atlantic University.
So beautiful. Linda?
I've got 5 college degrees, 3 of them are masters. But my latest one was University of Michigan Master in Social Work.
Oh,
And
great
Laura?
program.
Social
I-
workers. Wow, who'd have thought, huh?
No, I
Closest
actually,
to others can you get?
that building is very close to me, so I'm familiar with.
Ann
So
Arbor
I got my PhD on polymer science at UMass. So I'm theoretically a masshole. So, but college I went to a school in Istanbul, Koç University. It's like coach, couch.
What did you study there?
I studied engineering, but I realized that I like science more, so I did minor on physics and chemistry.
Neat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Interestingly, yeah, I was a philosophy major at school, and part of the greatest memories I have from college was certainly not anything that I learned in class or anything like that, but we had great parties. I went to some great parties in college and hosted a lot of great house parties with my classmates, and many of them had philosophical themes to them. We called them symposiums because after Plato's symposium, we would have great food there and drink a lot of alcohol and smoke a lot of weed and do a lot of other fun things, I believe. I believe I spent just about every day of my last 2 years under the influence in one way or another. Not that that's the right way for anyone else. I'm just saying, yeah, for those parties, I mean, I think we had a symposium on love around Valentine's Day, a symposium on fear around Halloween. I think we had a symposium on reality. We had at least a dozen of them, and I remember making up paper invitations for them, and they were a lot like these podcast episodes. I had fun finding a good graphic, finding a good title, writing up a good blurb for it, and so on. So hanging out with you guys just takes me back to then, and these parties are even more fun here. Does anybody else have any like funny stories or really positive memories from their college experiences?
No, just tears.
Tears. Happy tears or sad tears?
Stress tear.
Indeed.
I really loved my
Well,
life in Amherst, Massachusetts. I think it was a really peaceful, enlightened place of the planet, very educated in the middle of, they call it Pioneer Valley, but I mean there were farms and just people, students, like college affiliates there. It was really good.
nice. Well, you guys ready for your second question?
Please.
Here is your second question. What is the oldest historically black university in the U.S.? Is it A, Howard University in Washington, D.C., B, Wilberforce University in Ohio, or C, Cheney University in Pennsylvania?
I'll say Howard University. I don't know, but that's what I'll say.
Good guess. Bura, Grace?
I would say Harvard, but it could also be at north, like more northern states like Ohio and Pennsylvania. So I'm really wild ass guessing Cheney University, Pennsylvania.
Yep, that's my guess as well. C.
Well done. Yeah, indeed. I never heard of the other two, or I mean, I've heard of Howard, never heard of Wilberforce or Cheney until I was writing up this pop quiz. But yeah, Cheney was founded in 1837. Wilberforce is the fourth oldest, founded in 1856. Howard University is not even in the top 10. It was founded in 1867, as was Morehouse, another very prestigious historically black university. Panelists, just out of curiosity, what was your friend group like in high school? Did you have many friends of different races? And did I say high school? I meant college. What do you think?
I had a roommate. I mean, in like Turkey is not really super diverse in terms of racial, but it is diverse in terms of ethnicity. But PhD, I lived in a big farmhouse with my friends. There were 4 core people, but we also had +3 in rotation. So I had really good friend from Cameroon and living with me. He was a brilliant guy. He's still a brilliant guy. He's right now a vice president in a big
Wow.
bank. Yeah, he was super smart. And also one of my friends, she's right now a stand-up comedian in New York City. She's brilliant. She also, her parents are my immigrants from Nigeria, but she was a masshole. I always told her, you're a masshole more than anything.
That is a new phrase that I learned today. I'm going to have to remember that one.
Well, they're proud of being massholes in Massachusetts, but she was one of them.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had one black friend in college, but no, I pretty much hung around with white kids. I didn't have many Asian friends in college. I don't think it was till after I graduated college that I started caring about my ancestry as a Chinese American in this incarnation. I think I have more diverse friendships and relationships now than I did then, you know, and most of them are probably online through the Law of One and such. Linda, Grace, did you have many racially diverse friendships then or now?
You know, when I lived in the dormitory at Toledo University was where I got my first 4 degrees. Now that I think about it, there was only a handful of African American students in my dorm. I don't think there was any African American students on the entire floor that I lived on, 16th floor of Parks Towers. My best friend was a girl from Puerto Rico. So, you know, I'd hung with her for many years, but that was about as ethnic as we got.
Yeah, which of course brings up the whole question about affirmative action policies and trying to diversify the student body since, yeah, I would think there is a lot to be learned, a lot to be gained from having those different perspectives on the campus and perhaps in your friend circles. Grace, any thoughts to share? Any experiences to share?
Yeah, for me, I'm a biracial woman, black and white. However, I was transracially adopted, so all of my family is white. So, similar to you, Jonathan, I didn't start looking into or appreciate, you know, my ethnicity until later in life. And most of my friend group was all white, but I think that's probably from socialization because everyone I knew was white. But nowadays, the social work program, I mean, it's a variety of people from backgrounds, different sexes, different gender orientations, all kinds of things. So happy to say I see a lot of diversity nowadays.
Nice. Yeah, on our last podcast episode on social memory complex, we shared a passage fascinating where they were suggesting, our friends in the Confederation were suggesting that the plan for this planet was that each race was going to be dominant for a certain period of time, and it would just flow naturally from one to the next. So if you could imagine a planet history where the black race was dominant for a period of time, and then the Asian race was dominant for a period of time. I don't know, Native American, Middle Eastern, Latin American populations dominant for a period of time. That would have been so cool. That would have been really so neat to see how we could all learn from all of those cultures. And that is certainly part of my aim for this podcast, to help us all appreciate all the different gifts that we have to offer. Those in the LGBTQIA plus community as well have valuable gifts to offer in order for us all to become part of that social memory complex that we are destined to be. You guys ready for your last question? This is a money question. What is the average student loan debt? Is it A, $29,000, B, $39,000, or C, $49,000? Didn't know you're going to have to do math today, huh?
I have no idea, but I'll say B.
I hear a B.
I think B. I remembered it as 34, but I think 39, yeah. Some 30 something.
Pretty good.
Think
Grace?
an A,
Just to be different, right?
just to be different.
Just to be different.
Diversity.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many who wish it was 29,000, but yeah, the correct answer indeed is B, 39,000.
Wow.
That's
I
a lot.
believe, yeah, in the 23 to 24 academic year, according to my research, the average price of tuition and fees came to $41,000 at private colleges, $11,000 at public colleges for in-state residents, and $29,000 at public colleges for out-of-state residents. That's just tuition. That's not counting room and board. That's not counting textbooks. That's not counting food, everything else that you need to do to get through. So yeah, I think it would be fair to say we have created a very elitist system that only the wealthiest people can afford to go to, or if not, they're starting their adult life deep in debt and are already having to take some piece of shit job that they don't want to do just because they need to pay off their student loans. And if they're lucky, maybe get health care. It's a really fucked up system on so many different levels. I can see
And that
why,
leads to the sinkhole of indifference.
Mhm.
for sure.
Just logging through every single day, trying to make the ends meet.
You guys
Absolutely.
remember how much tuition was in your day? I believe the tuition at UC Davis was $300-400 a quarter. A lot different than now. You guys remember what the tuition was when you were? Grace, probably wasn't necessarily that long ago. Do you remember what the tuition was for you?
Yeah, I remember for my undergrad, each credit hour in state, I think was around $200, and this was back in 2014. So it
Wow.
was, I mean, it was very expensive because one class is 3 credit hours, so that's $600, and then, you're supposed to be taking 4 classes, so definitely adds up.
That's a lot. Linda, do you remember how it was back in the day? What was it, like
Back
$5
at the
or something?
University of Michigan for the master in social work, it was $3,000 a semester
Ooh,
for the tuition. But I was very lucky. I worked at a hospital then, and the hospital paid tuition for anybody who wanted to continue their studies. So I got my tuition paid for by the hospital that I worked at. But then, of course, I lived through the living hell of, full-time school and full-time working at the same time, which was a living hell for a number of years.
for sure. How about you, Bora? What was it in Istanbul or wherever you were?
Istanbul, let me try to remember. It was a private college and it was the most expensive, but I got scholarship. I was a nerd in high school. I really loved, my favorite class was math and geometry. But then I think I remember it being like $5,000 per year. It was a lot, and then in UMass again, I got a fellowship, research assistantship. So they paid me back. It was for 6 years I worked in the lab, but I could tell you my rent was back then, including the utility bills. I was collecting $400 from every person. I first stayed that house like in my first year. Then they relied on me. They said they were a nice family. We're moving out. You just take this over with your friends. I was getting $400 from 6 to 7 people. It was paying everything, including the utility. But we were keeping the house at 62 degrees at most. It was cold. So it wasn't really great living conditions. But still,
there's a price to pay somewhere.
yeah. But I remember I was paid like after taxes around $1,700, and I was paying $400 to house and every bill, maybe $50 to the telephone, and maybe to the car insurance and the gas. But I was somehow surviving back in 2007 to 2013. Right now, I don't think you can survive with that amount of money. You have to do something extra.
So, well, this has all been a lot of higher education and college talk. And as I recall, we're still trying to graduate from 3rd grade to 4th grade in the cosmic school of spiritual evolution. So let's have at it and do the best we can on the homework. Panelists, as always, it's been such a joy and an honor and a privilege to hang out with you. Any last thoughts want to share before we say goodbye to our viewers?
How much did you spend on your college, Jonathan? I didn't
Altogether?
No, I mean, but what was your tuition per semester, quarter?
At UC Davis, back in the early 1980s, it was about $300-400 a quarter, as I recall.
Wow.
University of California was pretty good about trying to keep their tuitions affordable for all. But needless to say, that has changed a lot in the last 40 years. And that's why, when I was in high school teaching, we would always encourage kids to not limit their focus just to college. As somebody was saying not too long ago, it's kind of overrated. And that, I would encourage the kids go into trades, learn a trade. You can earn really good money if you're good at working with your hands and you're good at doing that kind of stuff. It is every bit as good, if not more, than college. And I guess we'd just go back to our thing again about service to others, making the choice, and you just find the path that's right for yourself. Find the things that you're really good at doing, that you really enjoy doing. And that, I would say, is what you and your higher self planned for you in this incarnation to do. Otherwise, Linda, any last thoughts wanted to say before we say goodbye?
Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for putting this together, and I want to thank my fellow panelists. You guys are bright lights.
Indeed. Grace?
Just exactly what Linda said. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan puts together everything. So thank you so much for your service to everyone and organizing this. And I mean, it seems like a lot of work and a lot of detail goes into it. Thank you so much. And it's been great to be here with all of you.
It's an honor to hang with you. And as I said before we started recording, it's really fun. If this was work, I wouldn't do it. I'm too lazy to do it. I really have a blast doing this. So thank you guys for coming to the party. Bura, any last thoughts wanted to share before we say goodbye?
First, thank you for everyone organizing this, listening to this. But we also have to say, sometimes in occasions, I personally might have sounded like an authority. Please don't take me as an authority. It's just like I'm trying to be passionate about, this information. If you're here, if you caught attention to this, maybe it's important that you also study a little bit harvest, and maybe that's what your life plan is. It will help you and also planet as well. So but take all our words as words, and it's up to you to really, if it resonates with your heart, follow them. Otherwise, leave it as they are. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
If it makes you feel any better, Bora, I don't think of you as an authority. I think you look like the guy from the Despicable Me movies, I think. Or a
My
Turkish
wife was
Danny
telling me,
DeVito. I'm
like,
not sure. You got some kind of a vibe going there. I'm not sure what, but yeah, it's been a joy. Panelists, want to thank you for being here, all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all our friends at LNL Research, thank you for all you've done, continue to do in service to others. Everyone watching this video in the near or distant future, thank you for all you've done, continue to do in service to others. We are sending you our love light, and we are receiving yours. Until next time, in the love and light of the one infinite creator. Adonai. Namaste.
Bye.
Love y'all.